In the shining halls of Valora Academy, where students from 100 different worlds came to study, beauty was everything. Every creature seemed perfect, glowing skin, bright eyes, smooth voices. It was a place where outer beauty often mattered more than kindness or courage. But among all those bright faces, there was one who did not shine like the others. Her name was Lyra, a Zathrian woman. She sat quietly at the corner tables, her head slightly bowed, her face partly hidden under her long silver hair. Deep scars ran from her forehead down her cheek, twisting slightly as they caught the light. They were the marks of a terrible war. A war that had burned her homeworld, destroyed her people and left her alive when many others were gone. She was a survivor, but in a world obsessed with perfection, survival was not enough. Every time Lyra walked down the academy corridors, she could feel the eyes on her. Some looked with pity, others with disgust, but none with warmth. She heard the whispers behind her back. She should have stayed on her planet. Poor thing. She's so damaged. Why doesn't she cover her face? At first, she tried to ignore them. She told herself that she didn't care. But deep inside, every word cut deeper than the scars on her face. Meals were the hardest. In the grand cafeteria filled with laughter and light, Lyra always sat alone. The seats around her were always empty. Even when new students arrived, they quickly learned not to sit near the scarred one. Lyra told herself she preferred it that way. No eyes, no words, no questions, just silence. But sometimes when she looked at the reflections in the shining glass walls, she saw the old her, before the war, before the scars. The girl who used to smile easily. The girl who believed people could be kind. Now that girl was gone. She kept her head down and spoke little. Her voice, once warm, was now quiet and guarded. When she walked, her steps made no sound. She moved like a ghost through the academy, unseen and unwanted, yet, even in that sea of perfect faces and shallow hearts, someone noticed her. His name was Ethan Vale, a human cadet from Earth. Humans were still new to the Galactic community, but they were quickly gaining respect, known for their bravery, their will to survive, and their strange way of finding beauty where others saw none. Ethan was tall and strong, with calm brown eyes that carried both kindness and quiet confidence. Among the students, he was admired. Many called him the handsome human. He was liked by everyone, charming, smart, and always smiling. But Ethan was different from others in one quiet way. He didn't just see faces, he saw people. One rainy afternoon, while walking through the academy gardens, Ethan saw Lyra sitting alone on a bench beneath the silver-leaved trees. Rain fell softly on her hair, and though the garden was almost empty, she stayed there unmoving, staring at the horizon. Something about that sight struck him. The others avoided the rain, but she sat in it like someone who no longer cared about the cold. She looked fragile yet strong, like glass that had cracked but still refused to break. He stopped and watched for a moment. She didn't see him. And in that quiet instant, he felt something. Not pity, not curiosity, but respect. He didn't know her story. He didn't know what pain she carried. But he saw what others ignored, a heart still alive beneath the scars. That day, Ethan Vale made a silent promise to himself. He would talk to her. He would see her. Not the scars, not the whispers, but the person behind them. Because sometimes, it takes just one person to remind another that they are still human, even if they're not. And for Lyra, that moment was coming soon. Ethan Vale was different from most of his classmates. He didn't come from a world filled with shining palaces or floating cities. He came from Earth, a small blue planet far away, still recovering from its own wars and struggles. But that was what made him special. Humans had learned how to stand up again and again, no matter how many times life pushed them down. And Ethan carried that spirit with him. He wasn't just handsome. He was kind. His smile wasn't the fake kind that many wore to impress others. It was warm, real, and full of life. He treated everyone the same, whether they were covered in gold or dust. That made him different in a place like Valora Academy, where most people cared more about appearance than heart. In every group, Ethan was the one others listened to. During training, he encouraged even the weakest students. In the cafeteria, he shared food with anyone who sat alone. When someone made a mistake, he didn't laugh. He helped. That was why everyone loved him. But lately, his attention had been somewhere else every day. His eyes seemed to drift toward one corner of the garden, where Lyra always sat alone under the silver-leaved trees. She never spoke to anyone. Sometimes she read. Sometimes she just stared at the sky, as if searching for something that wasn't there anymore. Many students avoided that area altogether. They said it was depressing. They said she made the air feel heavy. But Ethan didn't believe that. He thought there was something powerful in that silence, something waiting to be seen. At first, he only watched from a distance. He didn't want to disturb her, but every time he passed that bench, he saw the same thing. Her stillness, her sadness, her quiet strength. One evening, after a long day of training, he found himself walking toward her without even realizing it. The sky was painted orange and pink as the sun dipped below the academy towers. Lyra was there again, sitting alone, her long silver hair catching the last light of the day. He hesitated for a moment. He knew what others would think. The most popular human in the academy, sitting beside the scarred alien girl no one spoke to. The whispers would never end, but Ethan didn't care. He wasn't the kind of person who lived by other people's opinions. So he took a deep breath and walked forward. When she noticed him coming, Lyra looked up quickly, startled. Her hand moved to cover the left side of her face, the scarred side. Her voice came out small and cold. "What do you want?" "Just to sit," Ethan said softly. "Do you mind?" She frowned. "You don't have to pretend to be kind." "I'm not pretending," he replied with a small smile. "It's a nice evening. Better than being alone indoors." Lyra stared at him for a few seconds, then looked away. "You'll regret sitting here," she whispered. "People talk. They always do." "Let them talk," Ethan said, sitting down beside her anyway. "They talk about everyone. It's what they're best at." For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of rain. Birds sang in the distance. Slowly, Lyra's shoulders relaxed. Ethan looked at her scars, not with pity but with quiet curiosity. He wondered what pain had created them, but he didn't ask. He didn't need to. Sometimes silence spoke louder than questions. Finally, he said softly, "You know, on Earth we have a saying, every storm ends in sunlight. I think it means no darkness lasts forever." Lyra turned her head, her expression unreadable. For the first time she met his eyes, and there, deep inside, something flickered. Not warmth, not yet, but a small spark that had been missing for a long time. When Ethan stood to leave, she didn't stop him. But as he walked away, she found herself whispering something she hadn't said in years. "Thank you." It was quiet, almost lost in the wind. Ethan didn't hear it, but he smiled anyway, as if he somehow knew. That night, for the first time in months, Lyra didn't dream of fire and pain. She dreamed of a human who sat beside her in the rain. And far away, under the same stars, Ethan smiled in his sleep, because he knew he had just taken the first step toward something beautiful. The next morning, the sky was pale and gray. The academy was quiet, wrapped in the cool mist of early rain. Students rushed through the halls, hiding beneath their colorful cloaks. But outside, under the silver trees in the garden, Lyra sat again, just as she always did. Only this time, she wasn't alone for long. Ethan came walking down the stone path, holding 2 steaming cups of tea. He looked relaxed, almost casual, but his heart was racing a little. He didn't know why he felt nervous. Maybe it was because Lyra's silence had a strange kind of power. It made him want to choose his words carefully. He stopped beside her bench. "You like rain, right?" he said with a gentle smile. "Earth tea goes well with it." Lyra looked up, surprised. Her silver hair clung to her face and her eyes were distant, as if she didn't understand why he was still here. "You came back?" she asked quietly. "Yeah," Ethan said, handing her the cup. "Thought you could use something warm." She hesitated, staring at the cup as if it were something dangerous. But then, slowly, she reached out and took it. Her long, thin fingers brushed against his hand for a second, and for a moment she froze. She hadn't felt human skin in years. It was warm, real, and strangely comforting. They sat in silence, sipping tea as the rain fell around them. The soft sound of raindrops filled the air, and the smell of wet earth mixed with the sweet scent of the drink. After a while, Ethan spoke again. "Do you ever miss your home?" Lyra's eyes darkened. "There's nothing left to miss," she said in a low voice. "My home burned, my people. They didn't survive." Ethan looked down at his cup. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to. She shook her head. You don't have to be sorry. It's the truth. I'm just one of the few who escaped. But sometimes I wish I hadn't. Ethan turned his head to look at her. Why? Because surviving doesn't always mean living, she whispered. Sometimes it just means you have to carry memories that hurt too much. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he set his cup down and leaned forward slightly. You know, humans have a saying too. It goes, scars are stories written on skin. Lyra blinked, confused. Stories, he nodded. Yeah, every scar means something tried to hurt you but failed. It means you're still here. That's something to be proud of. She stared at him for a long time. No one had ever said her scars were anything more than ugly marks. To hear someone call them stories, it stirred something inside her she hadn't felt in a long time, a small spark of dignity. You talk too much, she said softly, but there was a faint smile at the corner of her lips. Ethan chuckled. I get that a lot. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was gentle. The rain slowed to a light drizzle, and for the first time Lyra didn't feel the cold. She felt safe. When the academy bells rang in the distance, signaling the next class, Ethan stood up. I should go, he said. But I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Lyra frowned slightly. Why? He smiled, turning to leave. Because friends have tea together. Her breath caught. The word friend echoed in her chest like a forgotten melody. She hadn't heard it in years. No one had called her that since the war. As Ethan disappeared down the path, Lyra looked at the empty cup in her hands. It was still warm, she whispered to herself, friend, and felt a tear slide down her cheek. But for once it wasn't from sadness. It was from something new, something she couldn't name yet, hope. And from that moment, she began to wait for the next day, not out of habit, but out of quiet anticipation. Because for the first time in a long time, someone had chosen to see her not as a scarred stranger, but as a person worth knowing. Days turned into weeks, and the garden under the silver trees slowly became their secret place. Every morning before the academy's lessons began, Ethan would bring 2 cups of tea, one for himself and one for Lyra. Sometimes they spoke for hours. Sometimes they said nothing at all. But in both silence and speech, something gentle was growing between them. Something fragile, yet real. Ethan told her stories about Earth, about green forests that smelled of rain, about deep oceans where sunlight danced, about people who built homes from ashes and learned to smile again. His words painted pictures so beautiful that even Lyra, who had long forgotten what beauty felt like, began to imagine it. One morning, she asked softly, "Why do you always talk about the sea?" Ethan smiled. Because it reminds me that even when waves break, they always come back. It's like life, no matter how hard it crashes, it keeps moving. Lyra looked down at her hands, tracing the scars on her palms. I wish I could be like that, she whispered. But I feel stuck, like I stopped moving a long time ago. You haven't stopped, Ethan said gently. You're still here. That means you're still trying. For a moment, Lyra couldn't speak. His words were simple, but they hit deep. Deeper than anything anyone had ever said to her. That day she smiled. A small, hesitant smile, the first one he had ever seen on her face. It wasn't perfect, but to Ethan it was more beautiful than any glow of alien light. Yet not everyone saw it that way. Their friendship soon became the Academy's favorite rumor. Everywhere Ethan went, whispers followed him like shadows. Why is the human wasting time with her? He could be with anyone. Does he pity her or something? Ethan ignored them, but Lyra couldn't. One afternoon, as they sat in the garden, she turned to him and said quietly, "You shouldn't come here anymore." Ethan frowned. Why not? Because people are talking. They laugh at you. They call you names because of me. He leaned back, shaking his head. Let them talk. Their words don't matter. They do, she said, her voice trembling. You don't understand. I've been through this before. I know what it's like to be the one others mock. I don't want you to feel that. Ethan looked at her, his expression calm but firm. Lyra, I'm human. My people have been laughed at too. When we first joined the Galactic Council, everyone thought we were too primitive, too emotional, too weak. But we didn't let that stop us. She looked away. You're different. You're strong. He smiled softly. No. I just learned that people only have power over you if you let them. And I'm not letting anyone tell me who I can or can't be friends with. His words made her chest tighten. No one had ever defended her like that. No one had ever said she was worth standing beside. But even as she felt warmth in her heart, guilt lingered in her mind. She didn't want him to suffer because of her. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. The whispers replayed in her ears. The cruel laughter of others mixed with memories of the war. The voices that once called her a monster. She remembered the fire, the screams, the faces she couldn't save. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, the scarred face that had cost her everything. "You're a curse," she whispered to herself. "You only bring pain." The next morning, she didn't go to the garden. Ethan waited with 2 cups of tea, the steam fading slowly into the cool air. The bench felt emptier than ever. He waited again the next day and the next. Still, she didn't come. By the 4th day, Ethan understood. She was running away again, hiding from the world that had already hurt her too much. But he also knew something else. He wasn't going to let her hide forever, because if humanity had taught him one thing, it was this. You don't walk away from someone who's still fighting to heal, and Ethan Vale wasn't ready to give up on Lyra. Not yet. 3 days passed, and Ethan still hadn't seen Lyra. The garden felt empty without her quiet presence. The silver leaves no longer looked beautiful. The air felt colder, the rain dull. Every morning he brought 2 cups of tea like always, hoping she would appear, but her side of the bench stayed empty. By the 4th day, he couldn't wait anymore. He searched the academy halls, the library, even the old observatory tower. Finally, he found her. In the training hall, punching a practice dummy again and again. Her knuckles were raw and bleeding. Her breathing was heavy, but she didn't stop. "Lyra!" Ethan called out, running toward her. "Stop. You're hurting yourself." She froze for a moment, then turned sharply. Her face was red, her eyes filled with anger and tears. "Why are you here?" she shouted. "Can't you just leave me alone?" Ethan stepped closer, calm but firm. "Because you disappeared without a word. Because I had to," she cried. "You don't understand, Ethan. People are laughing at you. They think you've gone mad for talking to someone like me." He frowned. "Someone like you?" "Yes," she yelled, tears spilling down her face. "A monster. A broken thing. Look at me." She pointed to her scars, her voice shaking. "Do you see this? This is what I am. You should be ashamed to stand beside me." Ethan didn't move. He looked straight into her eyes. Not the scars, not the tears, just her. "I see you, Lyra, that's all I see." She shook her head, voice breaking. "No, you don't. You don't know what I've done. During the war, I was a soldier. I led people into battle. And I failed them. My ship was destroyed, my friends died, all because I hesitated. These scars are my punishment." Her voice cracked on the last word and she dropped to her knees, covering her face. "I don't deserve kindness. I don't deserve you." Ethan slowly knelt in front of her. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out and lifted her chin so she would look at him. His eyes were soft, steady. "Lyra," he said quietly, "on Earth we have a saying. The stars can't shine without darkness. Do you understand what that means?" She blinked through tears. "No. It means your scars don't make you ugly. They prove you survived. You went through something terrible. But you're still here. That's strength, not shame." Lyra's lips trembled. "But I caused death." Ethan shook his head. "You were in a war. People die in war, Lyra, but you saved others too. You lived. And that means you still have the chance to do good, to heal." She looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of pity. But there was none. "Only truth. Only care. No one's ever said that to me before," she whispered. He smiled gently. Maybe no one looked close enough. They stayed there for a moment, 2 souls surrounded by silence and soft light. The pain between them began to melt, replaced by something pure and wordless. When she finally stood, Ethan stood with her. "You're not broken, Lyra," he said. "You're proof that broken things can still shine." She gave a small, shaky laugh through her tears. "You humans really do talk too much." Ethan grinned. "Maybe, but sometimes words can fix what silence can't." As they left the training hall together, the setting sun painted the walls with gold. For the first time in years, Lyra didn't walk with her head down. Her scars were still there, but they no longer felt like chains. She glanced at Ethan beside her. the human who refused to turn away, and deep inside her heart, something changed. The guilt and fear that had ruled her for so long began to fade, because in his eyes she finally saw the truth. She was not a monster. She was someone worth saving, and maybe, just maybe, she could start to believe that again. The days after that moment in the training hall felt different for Lyra. Something inside her had changed. Quietly, like the first light after a storm. She still carried her scars, but now they no longer felt like a prison. When she touched them, she no longer thought of pain. She thought of survival, of Ethan's words that still echoed in her heart. "You're proof that broken things can still shine." For the first time, she walked through the academy halls without lowering her gaze. Some students still stared, some still whispered, but she no longer felt small beneath their looks. Soon excitement began to fill the air. The Festival of Lights was approaching. It was the biggest event of the year, a celebration where all species gathered to honor unity and hope. The academy transformed into a sea of color and sound. Floating lanterns filled the skies. Music from different worlds echoed through the halls. Students wore beautiful clothes, glowing fabrics, and shining jewelry. Everyone wanted to look perfect. Everyone except Lyra. She stayed in her room, staring at the simple white dress she had been given. It was plain, with no jewels, no ornaments. She touched her reflection in the mirror. The scars still there, soft but visible under the light. Her heart trembled. "Maybe I shouldn't go," she whispered to herself. A knock came at her door. When she opened it, Ethan stood there. He was wearing a dark formal uniform with a small silver pin that glowed like a star on his chest. But his smile was brighter than any decoration. "You're not ready?" he asked gently. "I don't belong there," she said quietly. "You know what they'll say." He shook his head. "They've said enough. Tonight we'll show them something better." Before she could answer, Ethan held out a small glowing flower. Its petals shimmered blue and gold, alive with gentle light. "It's called the Earth Star," he said softly. "It only blooms under starlight. I brought it from my world for someone special." Lyra froze. "For me?" He nodded. "For the bravest person I know." For a moment she couldn't breathe. Slowly she took the flower, her trembling fingers brushing against his. It was warm, and so was his gaze. "Come with me," he said simply, and so she did. When they entered the festival hall together, the room fell silent. Music stopped for a heartbeat. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them, the human and the scarred alien woman walking side by side. Lyra felt every gaze like fire on her skin. Her heart pounded. She wanted to turn back. But then she felt Ethan's hand gently brush against hers, a quiet promise that she wasn't alone. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm and strong. "This festival is about light," he said to those watching. "But light isn't just what we see on our skin. It's what shines from within us, and through pain, through scars, through survival." He turned to Lyra. "And tonight I see no one shining brighter than her." Gasps filled the room. Some people smiled. Some looked away, ashamed. But no one spoke a cruel word. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't hide them. For the first time, she didn't hide anything. She lifted her chin, the soft glow of the Earth Star in her hand lighting her face. In that moment, her scars seemed to fade under the golden light, replaced by something stronger. Pride. The music began again, slow and soft. Ethan offered his hand. "May I have this dance?" Lyra hesitated, then smiled, truly smiled, and placed her hand in his. They moved together under the starlit ceiling as the crowd watched in silence. For once she didn't care what anyone thought. All she felt was peace, the warmth of a friend who had turned into something far deeper. When the song ended, applause filled the hall. But Lyra didn't hear the sound. All she heard was her heartbeat, steady, alive, free. That night, under the lights of 100 worlds, the girl no one wanted became the woman everyone saw. And Ethan, the human who saw beauty in her scars, became the reason she believed in it again. The festival night ended, but its memory stayed in everyone's hearts. People spoke about it for days. How the human and the scarred alien woman had walked together like light and hope in the same breath. But for Lyra, it was more than a memory. It was the start of a new life. After that night, things slowly began to change at the academy. The same people who once mocked her now smiled when they saw her. Some apologized. Others still kept their distance, but their cruel laughter was gone. And through it all, Ethan remained by her side. Not as a protector, but as an equal. He never treated her like someone fragile. He laughed with her, trained with her, and challenged her to believe in her own strength. One evening, as the sun set over the crystal towers of the academy, Lyra stood on the balcony, watching the golden light fall across the horizon. The scars on her face glowed softly in the fading light. She touched them, and for the first time she smiled at her reflection in the glass. Behind her, Ethan approached quietly. "You look peaceful," he said. "I am," she replied. "For so long I thought these scars were a curse, but now I see they're part of my story. They're proof that I survived." Ethan leaned against the railing beside her. "They're not just proof of survival," he said gently. "They're proof of your courage. You faced pain and still chose kindness." Lyra turned to him, her voice trembling with quiet emotion. "You're the first person who ever looked at me without fear or pity. You saw me when no one else did." Ethan smiled softly. "I saw you because you never stopped shining, even when the world tried to hide your light." For a long moment they stood in silence. The wind brushed past them, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers. Above them, the first stars began to appear. Lyra took a deep breath. "Ethan, why did you choose me that day? You could have been with anyone. Everyone liked you." He looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because beauty isn't what the eyes see," he said quietly. "It's what the heart feels. And when I saw you, I didn't see scars. I saw strength. I saw someone who had every reason to give up but didn't." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of peace, not pain. She whispered, "You changed my life." He shook his head. "No, Lyra, you changed your own life. I just reminded you who you already were." A soft laugh escaped her lips, a sound full of warmth and light. Then without hesitation she reached out and took his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had always belonged that way. Years later, when both of them became ambassadors for interspecies unity, people from across galaxies came to hear their story. Lyra's face, and once hidden, was now on banners, in stories, and in art. Children looked at her and saw courage. Warriors looked at her and saw hope, and every time someone asked about her scars, she would smile and say, "They are not marks of ugliness. They are reminders that even broken things can heal beautifully." Ethan would stand beside her, pride in his eyes as he added softly, "And sometimes the most beautiful hearts are the ones that have been wounded." In the years that followed, they built a life together, a home filled with laughter, light, and stories of two souls from different worlds who refused to let pain define them. And every night, before sleeping, Ethan would trace the edge of her scars gently with his fingertips and whisper, "They're stars, Lyra, tiny constellations on your skin." She would smile and reply, "Then I am glad you were the one who found them. Under alien skies among worlds far from Earth." Their love became a story, one that reminded all species of what humanity truly meant. Not perfection, but compassion. Not beauty without scars, but strength through them. And so, the woman no one wanted became the heart of a new world, loved, honored, and forever remembered as the one who turned her pain into light. Because sometimes, love doesn't fix what's broken. It teaches us that we were never broken to begin with.